Well, it's daybreak on Arise News, and it's time now for the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. Now, clearly, let us start with our very own here, This Day newspapers. Taking a look at the screaming headline here. Two major headlines, actually. But this one says, in tough start, Adeleke signs executive orders, sacks 12,000 workers, Monarchs, and OSIEC chairman. Clearly, you heard that on daybreak this morning. The riders say Assembly fires back, says Osun anthem state of virtuous legal. APC condemns reign of terror by alleged PDP hoodlums. That's also in Osun State. Another says CJN, judiciary yet to be truly independent, administers oath of office on 62 fresh senior advocates of Nigeria.
A quick look at the Punch newspaper, and it's leading with the politics. APC Assembly tackle Adeleke governor as the governor sacks 12,000 workers. That's in Osun State. The APC is fuming, saying the governor is courting endless litigation. And foreign NGOs, fintech firms. Okay, well, I'll just skip that one. Let's move on to other papers now. All
right, then, so let's go over to Leadership newspaper here. It says, how governors set booby traps for successors. You might want to find out what that story is all about on page 4 of Leadership. It says, the writers here says it's wasteful, height of political rascality, says stakeholders and CSOs. Appointments in order, government to continuum. That's what the governors insist. Find out what that is about on Leadership newspaper this morning. Another story there says Abuja Kaduna Rail well secured, minister assures passengers.
The Nation newspaper, Adeleke hits Osun State with gale of sack reversals. Workers, 3 monarchs and others sacked. A Supreme Court overwhelmed by 6,884 cases.
And take a look at The Guardian here. It says, cyber crimes raise concerns for 30.2 trillion naira monthly e-payments. That's on The Guardian this morning. And the riders here say, Nigerians count losses as fraudsters get sophisticated, empty bank accounts. Death of IT staff worsens recovery time in banks. NCC issues over 9 security alerts since beginning of 2022. And the last rider there says experts seek review of Cybercrime Act 2015, kick against plea bargain. That's a story making the rounds there on The Guardian newspaper. Of course, we have that also on page 4 where it says, we have enough food for Nigerians, Agric Minister boasts.
The international papers, the Financial Times, China crisis, crackdown on COVID protests continue. And Europe still depends on Russian gas as seaborne imports jump to record high.
An iPaper here says Tory rebellion on wind farms, new threat to PM's authority. The story there says Rishi Sunak caught between rival factions of Conservative MPs as he attempts to see off a revolt against England's onshore wind ban and also avoid triggering counter rebellion. There's a whole lot under that particular story on iPaper this morning.
And this is The Independent. Police launch crackdown on China COVID protests.
And on the Daily Telegraph, we have this saying social media fines for child accounts. The writer there says online safety bill will check enforcement of age curbs after Telegraph campaign. Another says golden era with China is over, says Sunak, as he rejects idea trade will lead to democracy. Another there says COVID-related compensation claims are likely to exceed £1.3 billion. NHS bosses accept.
Well, for the press preview, let's bring in Emmanuel Bello. We're starting with This Day. And Emmanuel, a tough one. This Day says, in tough start, Adeleke signs executive orders, sacks 12,000 workers, monarchs, and the electoral body, the Osun State Independent Electoral Commission chair. Emmanuel, you've compared Osun State to the media platform Twitter.
only at the level of sacking. You know, Musk came in and did all those sacks, and that's how he started his reign at Twitter. And for Adeleke, yes, this day got it right when it says it's a tough start, and it's tough love too. You know, there are people who say he had to do that because his predecessor was trying to set traps for him. I think the Leadership newspaper is reporting on a whole lot of that. It's taking it actually as a topic of discourse, Leadership newspaper, focusing on what governors do when they are leaving office, and they just set you up for the kill, almost. But there are people who have argued that, look, government is a continuum, and that you do not just reverse all policies or programs of your for predecessor, unless if you had revenge in mind. Don't forget that this is a new party. Don't forget that Adeleke has had this running battle at a personal level with Oyetola, and that but I think as at yesterday, a lot of people on the socials and in some places where I spoke to some people, we're beginning to see him as a maverick sort of, and it didn't help that this is the dancing senator who suddenly translated into this governor. So some people think that it's a continuation of that kind of, his boisterous lifestyle, but his persona and everything. Some people thought it's a continuation, yes?
But don't you think it's even justified, honestly? Like when you see, governors in power a few months to leave, or even presidents begin to make all sorts of appointments, and you're wondering what this is about. It almost seems like it's compensation, of the cronies who have actually supported them. Most Nigerians will say, we run a turn-by-turn government, and saying, your time will come. Even if it's just 2 months before I leave office, I'll just give you something because of the money that's going to come in.
Yes, there's that bit of saying that, okay, look, let's just do something. I need to do something for my boys and all of that. There's that bit, but then there's the other bit too that a lot of people think that, well, I mean, some people have argued that, well, government is a continuum, and that when one can actually decisions from one or plans from one government can actually just dovetail into the next in a very seamless way. But that's where you have maybe some kind of reasonable kind of continuation, maybe of projects, for instance, that can be acceptable. But like Leadership newspaper did a whole range of investigation around this. It's a pattern. And Leadership say that most governors would like to take, not just even appointments, sometimes even take very crazy loans that the successor will be, will grapple with. And in the case of Osun State, there were those really serious appointments, and even permanent secretaries, some kind of, it's the implication of that is the amount, the monies that are tied to them. It's not just appointment, it's of course salaries, it's of course even the perks of office, the Monarchs too that were installed. So well, like the Leadership is saying, those are some of the things that governors do to create a crisis. And their successor always come up to say, look, I was left with an empty treasury, for instance, or I had this backlog, and that gives them it creates a situation where you have a false start. You are not starting on a very sound ground. Which is what I'm
asking. Don't you think it's really just? I mean, Emmanuel, talking about continuum, don't you think that can be achieved without an over-bloated workforce? We're talking about 12,000 people out of the system. And
to imagine that Oyetola, throughout his tenure, never actually employed up to that number, and then he did it in one fell swoop. Yes, so but that's part of it. On one hand, it's probably mischievous, to set up your successor for the kill and to make him start, because Adeleke is starting this way right now. You don't know what's going to. He's already having running battles with the House of Assembly, who are saying that, look, that is not the way to go. The APC is weighing on this and saying that, look, he's been dictatorial. He's not been democratic about it. So he's starting on a tough note, as they say, but it's also going to be a tough ride for him, because I mean, your first day in office is not a day to cut controversies like this, and it's not just an Osun thing. The whole country is weighing on that and watching it, and the opinions are divided on this. While some are saying, well, he's doing the hard work of taking those tough decisions. Others are saying that it's too early in the day for him to do all those sackings and those kind of, very almost revolutionary kind of change in one day.
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll wait to see where that gets him. Still in this day, the Chief Justice of Nigeria is lamenting that the branch of government is yet to be truly independent. Well, he's administered oath of office on 62 fresh senior advocates in Nigeria. Who is to blame?
Well, it's partly, you know, the crisis of democracy out here. The fact that, you know, separation of power, the fact that, you know, all the arms of government are supposed to operate independently. It's not happening. They still the power of the executive controlling or, you know, exerting undue pressure on both the legislative arm and the judiciary. And so this is just a very normal cry that we get to hear from time to time. It's still not right. The judiciary should be really, really independent. And I think the problem is funding on one hand, and then of course even the manner of, you know, appointments and all of that. I think that's what is ailing the judiciary. And so the CJN is echoing one of the things that a lot of people say it's a huge, huge problem for jurisprudence in this country, which is the fact that the judiciary is not always independent. The CJN himself, the other day, caught in trouble for himself with the comments he made in Rivers State, with people wondering if he has become political. So those are the sort of things that, you know, color the judiciary. And the courts are playing very, very strong roles here, kind of this season in elections, you know, upturning verdicts, you know, and deciding who is even going to go. It's not even at the polls again. It appears the court is the last place, the last field where contestants in elections are going to decide whether they are going to even run or not. So you can never overemphasize the independence of judiciary, not just because you want it to be free from the control of the judiciary, but of course to be free from any kind of undue pressure or undue kind of influence that would color or determine judgments.
Well, let's take one final paper here from Nigeria, away from the Adeleke issue as well. This says cyber crimes raise concerns for 30.2 trillion naira monthly e-payments. Clearly, cyber criminals or fraudsters are getting really, really, really creative and, you know, using sophisticated means. That writer there says Nigerians count losses as fraudsters get sophisticated and empty bank accounts. I mean, Emmanuel, it's one thing for us to go digital, you know, to go the way of the world, but then do we have the right infrastructure to back up the other end, you know, of the digital? What I mean,
I like the way you put it, to go the way of the world. Well, yes, and that's part of the crisis of modernity, of, you know, of trying to be part of the global, you know, community, and trying to be, you know, to go IT the way we want to go. And kudos to Guardian newspaper for that in depth. They went away from all the stories of the political stories and all that, and dwelled on this seriously, the way Guardian loves to do their story. And it's almost like a special report on that sector and the crisis of, especially now that the emphasis is always on, you know, technology. Even in our elections, we are going to be going beavers, and there's talk about e-money, there's talk about you know, cashless economy and all of that. So the more technology we use, which actually, you know, has its own good side, which it eases businesses, you know, they makes it actually also try to control fraud and the other. In it, of course, you find the problem, the crisis of fraud, the way the Guardian newspaper dwelled into it and dealt with it. I mean, look at the various aspects of the fraud, bedeviling. The idea that your money could just disappear from your account, you know, from hackers and those who can do that. It's a huge, huge problem, and I think the experts will be looking at various ways to safeguard, you know, people's wealth and sweats in, you know, in places. But it's a huge problem, and the Guardian is actually looking at the various sides of the problem. It's a wake-up call for those who are the regulators and those who are supposed to supervise that sector to see that people are protected.
In the last 60 seconds, Emmanuel, the campaigns appear to have slowed down. We haven't heard much from some of the frontline candidates. But something that came up late yesterday is the presidential candidate of the All Progressives, the governing APC, the All Progressives Congress. Well, apparently the campaign has now come out to they're apologizing for using the picture of a former governor of Cross River State, Donald Duke, after he spoke out about the using of his picture in one of the documentaries for their candidate. How do you think this happened?
Well, the campaign explained that they don't know how it happened, so probably Kenneth will know how it happened. But it's serious. It's such a terrible. I think it's embarrassing and it's disgraceful that the campaign can say, well, we don't know how this happened, because didn't you vet the videos? Did you vet the documentaries? I mean, is it a case of you know, unidentified flying objects, you know, getting into the way of your documentary, because that was Donald Duke Day. It was very clear. And the fact that it was, you know, they didn't own up to it until, you know, the former Cross River State governor came out and said, look, that's me in that video. In that video tells you a lot about the decency and the kind of transparency that we want to see around these campaigns. But it's a good thing that, you know, they came out. But it's like being caught in the act before the apologies. They came out to say a very lengthy statement, say, look, it's not in our character to do this kind of a thing. But the damage has been done already, and a lot of people think that there's no sincerity here, and that it colors, that seems to be the nature and the color of that campaign. They have to do a lot to reassure their base and the rest of us.
All right, thank you so much, Emmanuel. Speaking to Emmanuel Bello. Now that's a press preview. Let's hear your views on all the burning issues. Follow us on Twitter @AriseTV. You can also join today's conversation using the hashtag AriseDaybreak.